Gela Kesla, Nuga Hekwa'gila'ogwa Shelley, Umpas Kwakwaka'wakw, Abumpas Gwintilok. I am Hekwa'gila'ogwa. My English name is Shelley Joseph. I am the youngest daughter of Kwakwaka'wakw, or Chief Robert Joseph, and our late matriarch, Gwintilok, Donna Joseph. We come from the Kwakwaka'wakw speaking people, and our homeland is on the west coast of Canada, specifically the northern tip of Vancouver Island, the adjacent mainland, and some of the little islands in between. I want to talk to you today about our resilience as Indigenous people, and specifically the power and the resilience of Indigenous women, because Canada sought to eradicate us from our land, from existence, through the Indian Act that was created by the federal government in the late 1800s. This piece of legislation sought to assimilate us and colonize us into the Canadian body politic until there were no Indians left here in Canada. Before colonization, we had strategic and intrinsic governing systems among all the nations across Canada. There are over 600 different First Nations all across Canada. 80% of those First Nations were matriarchal. And the federal government did their best to disempower Indigenous women all across Canada through this legislation called the Indian Act. While the Indian Act still dictates who we are as Indigenous people here in Canada, according to the government, there are still pieces in there that disempower and oppress Indigenous women. This was so powerful here in Canada that we needed an inquiry, because there were so many Indigenous women who were going missing and are being murdered without the bat of an eye. And so Canada had an inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, where over 200 calls to justice were created from this inquiry. To my knowledge, none have been implemented yet. But I want to speak about our own personal resilience. My mother and my father both went to Indian residential school, another mandated institution that was created by the federal government to kill the Indian in the child. Children were taken from their homes, from their mothers, and put in these institutions, assigned a number, and treated less than human. Both of my parents experienced physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, any kind of abuse you can't imagine a child would endure. My parents both went. And over 150,000 little Indigenous children went to these schools and were treated less than human. They had their dignity taken from them, their identity taken from them. It was very intentional. The children were taken so that their parents and grandparents couldn't hand down thousands and thousands and thousands of years of knowledge that our ancestors held. It was intentional to take the children from their homes. My mother left that school broken, beaten down, had her voice beaten out of her. My father left that school so full of rage. He was angry for all the experiences that he had there. And both of them didn't have self-esteem. They didn't know how to love themselves anymore because of these institutions that they grew up in, that 150,000 Indigenous children grew up in. My parents fought back. Up until I was 7 years old, they both drank heavily. We had a dysfunctional home. There was rage and violence and neglect, all of the dysfunctions of alcoholic homes. But in 1977, my parents sobered up. My mom found her voice. My dad found the courage to stand up and be vulnerable and speak. I heard my mom tell her story that she had the audacity to stand up when an entire country didn't want her to. Both of my parents fought hard to heal, to grow, so that we could have a better existence. As a mother myself, I get it. I'm doing the same thing. I'm healing, I'm growing so that my children won't have the same fight that I had, that my parents had. And so now I own my own business called Lateral Kindness Training, and I talk about those indigenous ways of being, about respect, love, honor, lifting one another up, ensuring that everybody knows that they belong, ensuring that everybody knows that they matter. I also work as a knowledge keeper within a school, the First Nations Technology Council, to empower our people to jump in and move forward and take our place in society. It is my firm belief that when we as Indigenous people are elevated to our rightful place, everything will change in the world. It is my strong belief that when Indigenous women are elevated to our rightful place, all of the world is going to benefit from that. And so I boldly go everywhere with all my love, elevating, encouraging, cheering women on, and being loud about it, taking up space, using my voice, using my heart, leading with my heart. And it's my hope that all of our children, all of everybody's children will benefit if we all begin to step into spaces with our hearts first. That's the way of my people before colonization. That's how we were. In my language, we have a word, NAMWAYUT. It means we are all one. We're all interconnected as human beings, all of us. Also, we're interconnected with the land, with the animals, with the water, with the sky, with Creator, with Spirit, with the universe. We are all interconnected. And if I can embed that value in as many people as I can, it's going to change the world. If we all begin to lead with NAMWAYUT, that we are all one, we would begin to treat each other better because we see each other differently. We see that connection. We see that how I treat you affects me and everybody in my world, and so on and so on and so on. Gela Kasla Nath NAMWAYUT. Come well with me, all of you who are one with me. Wa listen tlachula nukunklus. Big is my love for all of you.